All right. Let's move on to Hertzberg's two-factor theory, so which is also sometimes called the motivation hygiene theory. A two-factor theory is called 이요인 이론 in Korean anyway. So this theory was developed by Frederick Hertzberg in 1959. It's quite classic theory, and it's based on a really interesting insight about what actually motivates people at work. Hertzberg and his colleague interviewed a lot of employees and asked them about times when they felt really good about their jobs and times when they felt really bad about their jobs. And they discovered something surprising. The factors that made people satisfied were different from the factors that made people dissatisfied. So this is counterintuitive, right? So we tend to think that satisfaction and dissatisfaction are opposites on a single spectrum. But Hertzberg said no. So they are actually two separate dimensions. He identified two types of factor. First factor is hygiene factor, and another one is motivators factor. So hygiene factor is that when absent or inadequate cause dissatisfaction. So, but when they are present, they don't actually cause satisfaction. So they just prevent the satisfaction. So they bring you from negative to neutral, but not from neutral to positive. So I draw some graph in class for your understanding. So this era is for which factor? Hygiene factor. Neutral and positive era is which factor? Motivated factor. So which means that when hygiene factors fill in the people or employees' needs and wants, not going up to or no more than zero neutral. So this is only effects give the effects in where dissatisfaction era. So what is hygiene factor includes salary, work environments, interpersonal relations, company policies, supervision, job security itself. Of course, salary, many students think this is already the head, also I am, but from the Hertzberg's two-factor theory, salary is not the factor for motivation. So which means that only can affect this era, right? Oops, sorry. So think about it this way. So if you are underpaid, you will be unhappy, of course. Underpaid, sad, right? But once you are paid fairly, additional money doesn't necessarily make you happier or more motivated. So if your work environment is terrible, for example, terrible, noisy, poorly equipped, you will be dissatisfied. But just having a decent work environment doesn't motivate you to do great work. It's just a baseline. And next factor is the motivator factor. So these are factors that actually create true motivation and satisfaction. These are the things that move you from neutral to positive. So they make you actually engaged and excited about your work. So motivation factor include achievement, recognition, responsibility, growth opportunity, work itself, enjoyment itself. So achievement means that the sense of accomplishing something meaningful, and recognition means that being acknowledged for your contributions, and responsibility means that having ownership and autonomy itself. So here is the crucial insight from Hertzberg's theory. If hygiene factors are lacking, people are dissatisfied, but fulfilling them doesn't create motivation. So having good hygiene factors just brings you to ritual, no motivation, but also dissatisfaction. On the other hand, if motivators are present, the people experience high motivation and satisfaction. But if motivators are absent, you don't necessarily get achieved satisfaction. You just get neutrality. So people showed up, do the minimum required, and go home. So they are not motivated, but they are not actively unhappy. So let me illustrate this with a specific example. So let's say you have an employee and you're a startup. So you pay them fairly. The office is decent. Their coworkers are nice. The company policies are reasonable. Everything's perfect. So all the hygiene factors are met, but their work is boring. They never get recognition for their contributions. They have no autonomy and they are not learning anything new. So will they quit immediately? Maybe not. So they are not dissatisfied enough to quit. But are they motivated? Absolutely no. So they are just going through the motions. They are not going to go above and beyond. They are not going to be creative. They are not going to put in extra effort itself. So are they motivated by the work itself? Yes, but are they also frustrated and dissatisfied? Also, yes. And eventually, that dissatisfaction will probably cause them to leave, even though they are motivated by the work. So here's the key takeaway for startup for the from the two-factor theory. So you need both hide factors and motivators. I see a lot of startup founders make one of two mistakes. The first mistake is they focus on only minimum, only on motivators and ignore hygiene factors. So focus on what? Motivator, I just write M, and ignore what? Hygiene factor, I just write the H. So they said, so we are changing the world. We are working on cutting edge technology. Who cares about salary or work-life balance? And yes, some people will be so motivated by the mission and the interesting work that they will tolerate poor hygiene factors for a while, but eventually it catches up. As people burn out, they need financial stability. Yes, and they get frustrated with chaotic policies or bad management. You can't sustain the high motivation if high factors are terrible. So, and the, a lot of startup founders makes huge mistake in high factors. For the second, they focus only on high factors and ignore motivation. It's opposite situation as this situation itself. So this is less common in startup, yes, of course, and this is common, yeah. But the opposite situation is not common, but sometimes it occurs, and many startup founders do the uh, try. Many startup founders operate the organization in this way, so make the huge mistake for it. So this less common in startup, of course, but it happened, yes. So maybe the founder comes from the corporate background and thinks, I will create a great workplace with good pay, nice office, clear policies, job security. And yes, those things will prevent dissatisfaction, but they will not create motivation. If the work is boring, if people don't have autonomy, if they never get recognition, they will be unmotivated, even though they are not satisfied. You will end up with a team that are comfortable but not a productive itself. So the startup application strategy in this meet minimum high factor standards with limited resources. So it is a really important thing for the startup scene. So I'm gonna highlight for it those two factors are really important for the startup environment. So first, this sentence means that be able to pay the highest salaries in the industry, that's okay. This is good. But you need to pay fair, liable wage. You might not have a fancy office, that's okay, of course. But you need to have a decent working conditions, and you might not have perfectly structured policies, that's okay too. But you need to have some basic fairness and consistency. So get the highest factor to an acceptable minimum. Don't let them be a source of active dissatisfaction. And then maximize motivators for high engagement. This is where startups can really shine. Shine, yeah. So even with limited resources, you can provide achievement opportunities in a startup. People can see the direct impact of their work, recognition. It costs nothing to acknowledge good work and celebrate with itself and blah blah blah. So these motivators don't require a lot of money. Do not need a lot of money. So they require intentional leadership and cultural building. So let me give you a practical example from my own experience. I worked in a startup that was struggling with motivation. The founder kept trying to motivate people by offering perks, free snacks, team dinners, occasional bonuses. These are high factors. And yes, the people appreciated them, but they did not become more motivated. So what actually worked was when we started focusing on motivators. We implemented a system where every team member owned a specific area of the product. So we started doing regular demos where people could showcase their work and get recognition. We create a learning budget where people could take courses and attend conferences. We gave people opportunity to experiment and try new approaches. Motivations went up dramatically. And you know what? These motivators-based strategies were actually cheaper than the Hyde-based perks. So remember, the Hyde factors prevent dissatisfaction, but only motivators create real motivation. So you need both, of course, but don't confuse them. You must memorize it.